Hey guys, welcome back to the It's Really Not That Deep podcast. I have a question for you. If you spoke to your best friend or your partner the way that you speak to yourself, would they still be your best friend or your partner? Most of us walk around with an internal critic that is worse than any hater or bully we have ever had. And the worst part is that this voice feels like truth because it's coming from us and we must know best. But really, this voice has been ingrained in our brain to try to keep us safe. So, today we're going to talk about the psychology of self talk. We're going to talk about how your self talk has developed, why it's so mean, and how we're going to rewire it to be kinder to ourselves. So, let's first talk about why we're so mean to ourselves, the origins of the inner bully. Our minds are like security guards scanning for threats, except instead of scanning for real physical threats, it scans for emotional threats, things that are going to make us feel insecure or embarrassed or like a failure. So our brain decides to step in and overcorrect by criticizing ourselves first. That way, no one can get to us before we do. So, for example, if you make a mistake in front of people and you jump to calling yourself stupid, at least you're calling it before anyone else can. And that feels like a protective mechanism when really, chances are no one's going to be as mean to you or care as much as you do. So let's talk about some psychological insights on this topic. So the first one is a negativity bias. Our brains are wired to notice and remember negative experiences 5 times more than positive experiences. That's why sometimes when you're up at night thinking about all the embarrassing things you've done, you're able to recall 5 times more than any positive things you've done, when really those are not accurate estimations. So next time you're thinking about an embarrassing situation or something that you regret, try to just remind yourself of this, how rude our brains can be and how maladaptive and the negativity bias. Try to replace it with something positive. When you're in a good mood, make a list of all the positive things you've done, all the good memories you have, and refer back to that whenever your brain starts to spiral. The next concept is internalized voices. So, as kids, we absorb all the external criticism and eventually start to repeat it automatically and believe it about ourselves. Freud called this the superego. Modern CBT calls it internalized stigma. There's all these different names for it. But what we know is that we've absorbed too much negativity. Again, we remember negative things 5 times more than positive ones. So if someone says to you one day, your hair doesn't look good, and someone says to you a week later, you are absolutely stunning, what are you going to remember? Your hair not looking good. And that's what you're going to focus on. The compliments don't hold as much weight, they don't matter as much. Think about how much this will affect you negatively. If positive words and positive affirmations aren't cutting through or are only cutting through 1/5 of the time, think about how much you have to compensate for that with positive affirmations. And that's why it's so important to practice them on your own and make sure you're complimenting people, make sure you're complimenting yourself. So, the last concept that I'm going to talk about on why we're so mean to ourselves is the self protection loop. Criticism seems like it equals control. It gives us the illusion that if you're harsh enough on yourself, you're going to prevent failure. If I can think it, if I can think of all the ways it could go wrong, I can avoid that. But it backfires. It keeps you anxious, it keeps you small, and it keeps you hyper vigilant because your brain is in a context of failure because that's what you're thinking about. You realize by now, if you listen to this podcast, that your mind creates your reality. Your thoughts create your reality. So if you're thinking, oh my God, like I'm going to fail, I need to make sure I don't fail, I need to make sure I don't embarrass myself, you're priming your brain to do those things. The more you try to run from something, the more it chases you, unfortunately. But if you're thinking to yourself of all the things that could go right and of all the ways that you can surprise yourself by impressing yourself and impressing others, you create your reality. So that is more likely what's going to happen. I have an example of this that was really hard for me to share until now, but I was in this class in, I think, grade 10, a public speaking class. And I got up there in front of the class. I was this little awkward, shy girl. And I started doing my presentation, and my teacher stopped me like 2 minutes in and was like, stop, pretty much saying this is horrible. And it was. It was not good. And he did teach me a lot about public speaking, and now I have a podcast. So we're good here. But At that time, I felt so ashamed. I thought, how could I have not known better? How could I have not known to do better? And this is a thought that comes up all the time. When I make a mistake, I tell myself, you should have known better. How? How? Mistakes are part of the process. So, in that time when I had gotten embarrassed in front of my class and called out, I was thinking, you're so stupid. You're so dumb. You're so embarrassing. You should just drop the course. Like, there's no redemption from this. When I look back, I think, "Oh, poor girl. She was just learning. She was human. Maybe she needed that experience to get where she is now." And I realized that that reaction of "you're so stupid," that wasn't me. That was a learned defense mechanism. That was me attacking myself to avoid anyone else attacking me, because if I can say it to myself first, what other people say isn't gonna hurt me as much. But that's not even true. It's really not even true. You're just feeling the pain twice. You're putting yourself through more suffering than you really have to. You could be self-compassionate, you could be loving to yourself, you could realize that everybody makes mistakes and that's actually the only way to learn. Or you can beat yourself up. Okay, now that we've talked about why we're so mean to ourselves and the psychology behind that, we're going to talk about the psychology of self-talk, what's actually going on in the brain. And once we can understand this, we can start to rewire. Because once you understand something and acknowledge something, you can start to change it. So the first insight slash idea is cognitive distortions. So cognitive distortions are what they sound like. It's thoughts or cognitions that are distorted, incorrect. And our inner dialogues often run on distorted thinking. So I'm going to give some examples of distorted thinking. One is all or nothing. If I'm not perfect, I'm a failure. When you hear this, you probably think, yeah, that's silly to think. Yet, I bet you've had those thoughts. I've definitely thought these things. If I'm not perfect, I'm a failure. If I'm not reaching my goals like this, I'm a failure. So when I can catch that distortion, I can start to reframe that distortion to I'm not perfect, I'm learning. I'm not perfect, I'm trying. If I'm not perfect, I'm getting better. Not I'm a failure. What? The second cognitive distortion is mind reading. This is assuming that we know how other people think. So when you are giving a presentation thinking that somebody in the crowd looking at you weird thinks you're dumb, how do you know what they're thinking? How do you know what they're thinking? What makes you the all-knowing being? No. We mind read as a form of control to think that we know what other people are thinking to protect ourselves or to alter ourselves to fit their perception that we're not even right about. Again, this is something that we all do. The important thing is, next time you catch yourself doing that, think to yourself, I don't know what they're thinking. Why would I assume? So this happens all the time, especially in close relationships, and it makes communication all that more important. If you do something or say something and your partner or your friend reacts weirdly, there could be a million reasons for that, but you might jump to, "Oh my god, like, I shouldn't have said that. Now they're gonna think of me differently. Now they're not gonna like me. Now they're gonna think I'm rude or stupid," when they could just be thinking, "Oh, I never thought about it that way before. That's kind of interesting. That was a really smart way to put it." And unless you ask, you'll never know. So why assume the worst? Why are we always assuming the worst? It's so maladaptive. And the last cognitive distortion that we're going to get into is catastrophizing. And this, for example, is if I mess up, everything is ruined. If I mess up this presentation, I'm going to fail out of this program. If I mess up this task at work, I'm going to get fired. Giving one experience or opportunity so much weight and thinking that if it goes wrong, the worst possible thing is going to happen. I personally find value in thinking of worst case scenario because I like to think, that's a form of preparation. That can be maladaptive. That can also be helpful for me because I think, okay, if the worst case scenario were to happen, I will still be okay. That is not catastrophizing. That is just, I don't even know what to call it. I find that adaptive. It's okay if you don't. But catastrophizing is always going to the worst case scenario and like truly feeling like it's going to happen. If you're in a position where you feel like messing up once at your job or messing up a presentation is going to ruin your life, you're either in the wrong field or you are seriously struggling with confidence. However, I catastrophize all the time. I took a test the other day and I thought, oh my God, like I did not do well on that test. What if they don't think I'm good enough for this program? What if they think I'm stupid? What if all of my classmates find out that I did the worst in the class? Meanwhile, I actually did quite well on the test. But just an example of how easy it is to catastrophize and go to the worst case scenario in a non adaptive, non functional way. And the reason that we do these is to save mental pressure. These distortions form shortcuts in the brain, and they're efficient, but they're inaccurate. So we love to jump to conclusions. We hate uncertainty. So we love to know, well, the worst case scenario is this, and I'm going to jump to this conclusion, even though I really have no idea what's going to happen. We think that it's saving us mental energy, but really it is bringing us down. It is ruining our confidence. It is using up our energy, and we need to stop. And in terms of mental rewiring, I like to think of this as our brains building mental highways for negative thoughts. So every time you're thinking, I suck, that neural road gets more paved and automatic. So it becomes stronger and stronger the more you think it. But every time you challenge it, you're destroying that road and building a new one to self compassion and confidence and self love and self affirmation and all the good things that we love and are trying to attract in our lives. So, the next thing that we're going to talk about on this theme of the highway is neuroplasticity. So, your self talk physically rewires your brain. This is why, if you've been around, you know that I love affirmations. And this is why the things that you say to yourself actively change who you are because they're actively rewiring your brain and how you think of yourself. These repeated thoughts strengthen certain neural circuits, literally shaping your sense of self. So, this means that you can reprogram your brain. Let's just sit in that for a minute. How powerful is that? We can change any thought pattern, good or bad. This can be very amazing or this can be very horrible. Because if you're doing these cognitive distortions and you're going down these paths of every time I make a mistake, it means I'm unworthy and I suck and I'm stupid and I'm embarrassing, that's what's going to become our default. And it is hard to rewire. But the sooner you start, the sooner you'll be better. And if you're hearing this and you're like, oh my God, I'm actually really mean to myself, a really easy way to start with this is by downloading an affirmation app. I've talked about this before. I use the app called I Am, and it sends affirmations to my phone, I think like 5 or 6 times a day. And you don't have to spend so much time on this, but even just reading those affirmations, it takes like 2 seconds. It's literally a notification that pops up on your phone. Reading it and just noticing how it makes you feel. Do I believe this affirmation? If not, why not? If so, why? And just affirming yourself over and over again. And writing down your favorite ones and reading them to yourself whenever you can. In the morning, when you're feeling down, when you're feeling up. Practicing these affirmations is truly the easiest way to rewire because you don't have to believe it at first. So, the last thing that's happening with our self talk is the self fulfilling loop. So, this just reinforces what we've been talking about, but think of it as you have a belief, that belief leads to a behavior. Once you enact that behavior, you find evidence, and then you reinforce that. So, if that didn't make sense, I apologize. I'm going to give you an example. If you tell yourself, I'm lazy, you're going to avoid tasks, which then proves the belief and rewires the thought of I'm lazy. Your inner voice becomes your self concept. Your brain always wants to be right. On the flip side, if you tell yourself I'm productive and then you clean your room, that's the behavior. The evidence is a clean room and you showing up for yourself because you said you would. And the reinforcement is that feeling good. Your brain always wants to be right. It hates uncertainty. It wants to be right. So, what you tell yourself, you're more likely to enact because your brain is going to seek evidence of what it believes. So, if it believes you're lazy, best believe you're going to be lazy. If it believes you're fit and abundant and productive and smart and all the good things, anything that you want to be, it's going to seek validation through your actions, through your behaviors. This is rewiring our subconscious. Just a quote to put this all together. We don't act according to who we are. We act according to who we believe we are. And we can change our beliefs just by changing our mindsets and our thoughts and what we keep repeating to ourselves. So, this is all good and dandy, and we've talked about ways to really rewire and become kinder to ourselves. So let's talk about why kindness is actually more effective than criticism. I know that in the past I've thought, criticism will evoke action because I'm going to feel bad about myself and then I'm going to want to take action to fight that and feel better, but that's actually not how it works. So, research has shown that self compassion leads to higher motivation, resilience, and accountability. So, notice how it doesn't say self criticism, it says self compassion. When you're kind to yourself and you're understanding and you meet yourself where you are and you look at yourself as somebody who is worthy and worth taking care of, you're going to be a lot more motivated. You're going to be a lot more able to deal with what comes your way and actually reach your goals. This part I really want you to pay attention to. Harsh self talk triggers the same threat response in your body as actual danger. So, when you're saying these mean things to yourself and putting yourself down, your cortisol is spiking. Your cortisol is your stress hormone. Your focus drops. Your creativity shuts down. All negatives. Only negatives come from harsh self talk. There's a difference between motivating yourself through I can do better and saying you're not good, do better. That is a huge difference. One is taking accountability, understanding that you are better than this, you can do better than this, you should strive higher than this. The other one is saying you're no good, period. Okay, and the last part of this is that when you're kind to yourself, it activates oxytocin, dopamine, and safety. These are the feel good hormones. If we feel good, we can do good. I hope this is all coming together and making sense and just how maladaptive self talk is and how there really is no place for it in our lives. So, just for an analogy, imagine trying to grow a flower by yelling at it to bloom faster. You're not motivating it, you're suffocating it. It's the same with a child. If you keep yelling at this child to do it better, do it different, you're not going to motivate them. You're going to make them feel self conscious and like they're not good enough. But if you focus on the things that they are doing well and give constructive criticism and advice and tips and say, you're so great, like, how can we make you even better? That's what motivates people. That's what's going to motivate you. And again, your brain learns safety from repetition, not from punishment. The kinder your self talk is, the more your nervous system is going to be able to relax, and the more you'll actually become that better version of yourself that loves yourself and can look in the mirror and not say, ugh. Okay. So now that we've broken down the psychology of negative and positive self talk and rewiring our brain, just like we always do, we're going to talk about some takeaways on how to stop being your own bully slash the rewire process. So, step number one is catching it. Noticing when the inner critic shows up. Again, acknowledgement is the first step. Once we can acknowledge it, we can start to change it. Something that I like to do is give this inner voice a name, and this actually creates distance from it because the name is not Joelle. It's not me. So I just call mine critic. I just call mine critic, call it like it is. This is my self critic. And sometimes the self critic can be beneficial, like we talked about, when it's motivating, when it's telling you, yeah, you could actually do better, but most of the time it's not. So just calling it what it is and letting it be there without judging it or taking it on too seriously, because that's not me. That's just my critic. Who cares? Step number two is to challenge the thought. So ask, is this thought true? If it is true, maybe there are some changes that need to be made and things that need to be done, but that doesn't mean that they should be done from a place of negativity and criticism. The second question to ask is, would I say this to a child? Why do we treat ourselves so badly? Why do we think it's okay to talk so poorly to ourselves? If anyone in our lives spoke to us this way, we'd be like, get out. We spend the most time with us. We know ourselves best. Why is it okay that we speak that way to ourselves? It's not. It's not. And the third question, and the most important, is, does this help me become who I want to be? Again, sometimes it's adaptive, sometimes it's motivating, but most of the time it just drags us down. We don't need that. Step number three is to change these thoughts, aka rewire. I like to rephrase things in second person, so not like I can do this, because I find that it activates a more nurturing and neutral tone. It's like my higher self speaking to me rather than me presently speaking to myself, which just gives me some more comfort and motivation. So instead of saying, I can't do this, and I say that sometimes, I'm like, this is too hard, I can't do this. I say, you've done hard things before. You can do hard things. You can at least try to figure it out. And so what this does is it mimics external encouragement and it helps the brain release dopamine. Completing tasks releases dopamine. So if there's a signal that, oh my God, I'm going to be able to complete this task and it's hard and I can do hard things and you can do hard things, it's like, oh, cool. And step number 4 is compassion repetition. And this can look like practicing just one affirmation that actually feels believable to you. So this is going to take some work on figuring out what feels realistic to you and what feels good to you. So just some examples are, instead of I'm good at everything and I'm amazing and I'm fantastic, I'm learning. I'm learning as I go. I'm learning as I grow. Um, Not practice makes perfect, practice makes progress. I don't have to be perfect to be worthy. I'm worthy of compassion even when I make mistakes. If these aren't resonating, just search up or ask chat for some affirmations and just pick one or two that feel good to you. Write them on your desk, write them on your mirror, somewhere that you're going to be practicing these thoughts over and over again until you really believe them. And I promise, fake it till you make it doesn't always work, but in this case, it does. And let me tell you, there's no harm in trying. There is no harm in trying. And the first time you try, you are going to feel stupid. The first time I started doing affirmations, I was like, oh my God, like what? What is this? And now I swear by them. I love them. I clearly endorse them all the time. But there's resistance to anything new, especially if you don't feel deserving deep down. So I'm telling you, and I hope you can take it from me to push through. It's well worth it. So to wrap this up, I just want to remind you that your inner voice is not background noise. It's the tone of your entire life. And if that tone is negativity all the time and self-criticism, something's wrong. You cannot heal by bullying yourself into change. You will only evolve through compassion and curiosity and openness to learning and being different. So, a quote that I really like is, you've been criticizing yourself for years and it hasn't worked. Try approving of yourself and just see what happens. Just try something different. If it's not working, try something different. So, my final thoughts are that your thoughts create your world. Your internal world creates your external world. So, if your self talk has been cruel, it's time to rewrite it because you deserve to be on your own side. You should be your biggest supporter, your biggest fan. This life is yours and only yours. Thank you guys so much for listening. I hope if any episode has ever resonated, it is this one because you deserve to feel good about yourself. You deserve to feel good about your life. And if you don't, you deserve to not feel hopeless. You deserve to feel that there is a light at the end of the tunnel and you are strong enough to get there. If you did like this, please like, subscribe, share. It really helps me out and I really appreciate you. So I'll see you next time.